that's of interest, orient yourselves. But this is a big year right now for us because this is the 50th anniversary of the founding of this museum. And this is also the year that that time capsule over there in City Hall lawn is going to get opened up at 4th of July. So that's going to be exciting. And something you don't think about that I know Sandy knows is that in a couple of years, it's going to be our bicentennial. Hard to believe, but Pleasant Hill actually started as a little community in 1828. So in a couple of years, we're actually going to have our bicentennial as a community. Now that doesn't mean official to town because that happened later, 1859. We got officially made a town. That people started calling this area Pleasant Hill back in 1828. So we got a little bit of thing to prepare for that we should figure out a way to celebrate. And one of the things we're going to do to try to celebrate all these historical things is we're going to do a film that's going to be the history of the community. Now, we got a grant to help with the cost of this, about half the cost of this, from the Missouri Humanities Council. Well, when we put out the press release on this and let the media outlets know about it, we got contacted by Kansas City PBS. And they said they wanted to partner with us on this. So this is very exciting. So we're going to be doing, in the next few months, we're going to be doing this film. Now, it's only 10 minutes long. That's all these things are. But it's going to be one of those ones, if you go to museums, a lot of times you'll see a film maybe at the beginning of a museum. Well, it's going to be there, but it's also going to be in a lot of other places. And so, it's only 10 minutes long. That means it's 20 years a minute or something like that we're going to have to cover. But we'll get it done. So we haven't figured out quite how to do this yet. But so watch for more on that. It's coming up. So anyway, without any further ado, I wanted to introduce our esteemed curator, Pete Shortridge, up here, who's going to give the curator's report, and then he's going to introduce our program. And also, Pete, now, so you're doing a speech over at the library in May, right?
16th.
May 16th. What is it on?
Going to talk about some of the legacy of Booth of the hatchery fame and what else?
Kellogg Greenhouse?
Yeah, Kellogg and the Greenhouse.
Well, Colonial Poultry Farm, big deal. That's why we're the roosters and the chicks, right? So, fantastic. It'll be really nice. So anyway, without further ado, please welcome our esteemed curator, Pete Shortridge.
Clearly, I haven't put the talk together yet. Can't quite come up with the name. It's really wonderful to see the room full. That was our goal. Now we got a problem. And, so we have our work cut out for us in the future. But that's a good problem to have. So welcome. Good spring day and all that kind of stuff. We even had a little picking and grinning going on in the other room. And after we finish here, there are cookies, water, coffee, that kind of thing in the other room. So please join for a little discussion over there. In terms of what's been going on around here, I guess the biggest of the new additions to the museum we announced in the newsletter, that is we have two majorette costumes. One by Alma James, if anybody remembers her back in the late 50s. Alma James Foote came. Her mother made them, hand sewn them. I was never sure, I don't know whether any of you are or not, about things like band uniforms and cheerleader outfits, exactly to what degree they belong to individuals and to what degree they belong to the school.
The band uniforms belong to the school.
But somehow or other we end up with one or two, and I don't know quite how that's happened. The other thing I always wondered just about the band uniforms is why they always are blue. You'd think they'd be purple, but they are blue, and I never figured that out. But anyhow, we have major outfits that we have to figure out a way to display. In terms of the museum itself, Don and I have been busy trying to get the thing a little bit better organized. The newest thing that you might like to look at when you go out is an exhibit on houses, on some of the older houses. I put together a publication on 47 of the pre-1929 houses in town, and the exhibit features about half of those over in kind of the corner of the museum by the restrooms. So that's there. Also working on exhibits about some of the major industries in town. So I pretty much have one on the scale foundry complete and one on the hatchery complete. The greenhouse is 3/4 complete, and I'm still just now working on the permits, which is one thing I found out, but I hadn't realized quite how big the Pruitt operation was. So, a major thing. And I guess I should add, I have written a booklet about the Pruitts, so that's the newest publication that's available. If some of you would like to be interested in those kind of things. Let's see. Those are the major things going on with the museum itself. One other announcement I want to make is this is my wife's birthday. The editor of the newsletter, she's very proud of this newsletter. I don't know if you've all read it or not, but she calls it the sin issue because it has saloons on the front and prostitution on the back. Not as racy as we can get with the local newsletter. So, it's a big birthday for her, so say hi to her on her way out. All right. With further ado, then, let me try to introduce the speakers today. Al Storms has been a regular here, and sort of bugs me every time that the meeting is over about, you can do something with this, and how about something like that? We can have some discussions on this. And finally, he got tired of me going, yeah, that sounds like it might be good. And he volunteered to do it himself. Turned out he wasn't quite that brave, and he got a cohort to go along with him, but it's all good. And as you know, he's going to talk about rural schools. And it's something that we really need to be talking about because unless you're the age of Al and me, not too many of us left to remember those middle schools when they were in operation. And they're a huge part of America's legacy, really, not just Cass County and Pleasant Hills. So this is going to be fun. Al, I got to know well because he's part of the great class of 1962. And Adrian and I agreed was the greatest class that Pleasant Hill has ever had. Anyhow, John Gentry, who's going to speak with Al, he ended up migrating to Harrisonville for his completing of the secondary school. So not many of you maybe know him, but you know the Bakkensticks, a famous name around Pleasant Hill and Harrisonville history. That's the general lineage there. In terms of Al, to get back to him for a second, he and I ended up knowing each other, I think primarily because his last name of Storms and mine Shortridge put us on the back row in many classes, and so we got to talk. Although, in all honesty, I think both of us talked more to Sharon Rogers than we did to each other, but that be. So I think that's enough for me. John and Al, we thank you for this presentation.
Well, that was quite a build-up. I hope that we don't disappoint. When Pete was talking there, the thought crossed my mind. I was at the last quarterly meeting, and the topic was on the pioneer log cabin that was moved into Harrisonville. So there was quite a bit of discussion about the town of Harrisonville. And at the end, someone started talking about back in the day, all the tricks they used to play on the Harrisonville kids. Some of you here will remember that. And so I don't know, the fact that I live in Harrisonville and John graduated from Harrisonville High School, we I don't watch our back.
Alvin, we can't hear you back here. You have to talk louder.
I'll try to talk louder. I'm having some pollen issues, and I don't know that I can really talk much now.
Okay, now before you get started, I'm gonna see if we can't do a little bit of, we need Where's that, what this?
Thank you.
Make sure it's a little bit that way.
Oh, there we go.
Somebody hear me?
Ask him when you check it out. While we're doing that, we'll, in a moment, trying to get a few more people.
Okay.
This is like church on Sunday morning. You're all gonna have to like each other.
Hey, Dad. Matt.
That's right.
As far as down as I can get it.
Now, can you hear me? Been established. And we were in the Pleasant Hill Township. And the new constitution said that section 16 of every township was to be used to fund schools. Of course, section 640 acres, it didn't say the school had to be there, but funds were used to establish it, and they were administered by the townships. There were 19 townships in Cass County, so there may have been 19 schools. And John found, in some of the research he did, that the first school, or recorded school anyway, in Cass County was established in 1830 in Pleasant Hill. And it was located in what used to be called Old Town, where the Methodist Church is now located. Okay, so there may have been 19 schools. We really don't know too much about those schools. Now, fast forward to 1853, and there was a law passed called the Kelly Act, and that took the schools away from townships and created local school districts. And the law said that the school district was supposed to be a size that all the students could either walk or ride their horses no more than 1.5 miles to school. And so the school districts were established as a result of this 1853 law. And it said that there was to be a county commissioner of common schools. The first county school superintendent in Cass County was in 1855, and that position was discontinued in 1971. Okay, the Plum Grove School District
is 4 square miles, just about exactly, and the school is in the middle. So students either walked or rode their horses no more than a mile and a half. Now, we found that the school wasn't originally in that position. Originally, it was a mile north, which now would be 208th Street. And it was called the Bernal School because the Bernal family owned the land that donated the school. And then in 1881, the school was moved a mile south. And so that's where it wound up in the center of the school district and where the building still stands today. Now, we think at that time is when the name was changed to Plum Grove. And we don't know, I was going to say there was no written record as to how the name of the school was decided on, but we do have a written statement from Newton Small. Newt had family going way back into the 1800s in this area. I think Ginger Small Hope back there is a relative of his. And he had information passed down through the family. Back leading up to the Civil War, there was all types of thievery going on. We had people coming over from Kansas, which was a free state, Missouri slave state, and they were stealing livestock and crops and everything. Well, where the school stands, back at that time, there was a grove of wild plum trees. Some people might call it a thicket, but maybe grove sounds a little better. And for people who are familiar with plum thickets, they just start growing out in a huge circle if they're not stopped. They grow 15, 20 feet tall, and there's a thick canopy so you can't see in. And I remember these from quail hunting days. They're usually bare under the ground. Well, the Bernals, to protect their livestock, they took their donkeys and their mules and hid them in the plum grove, and so that the raiders couldn't find them. Now, if a mule or a donkey brays, they can be heard for a long ways. So according to Newt, they tied stones or bricks on the animals' tails, and they have to raise their tail to be able to bray. So that kept them quiet. So that's the story we have about. If Linda Springer is here, they have mules.
That's true.
That
I've
is
got a whole herd of them at my house.
Okay, now.
Joe, why it's true? I can't.
My daughter raises them.
I know, but why the
They
tail?
bray, but it's like he said, they have to raise their tail. And usually the ears perk up when they do it. And a donkey's the same way. We got a donkey.
By the way, as we go along, if you have questions or comments, just raise your hand. We don't have to wait until the end. Okay, the next law was passed in 1904, and that was the Missouri Mandatory School Attendance Law. And that said, and I might mention that I read before the mandatory school law, half of the rural adults in Missouri were illiterate. They couldn't read or write. But the mandatory law required children between the ages of 8 and 14 to attend school 3/4 of the time. Now, the school year was only 120 days, so they had to attend 90 days. The exception for that was if the family needed them at home to support the family, or if the student wasn't of sound mind. Now that could have taken in a lot, I guess. Okay, they were required to teach 8 grades, and the subjects was to be reading, writing, and arithmetic, or other subjects the district chose to add. And It also required that each district have a school board, and the school board was to hire and fire teachers, maintain the building, and buy necessary supplies. Now, 1904, as a result of that law, there was supposed to have been a huge growth in the number of one-room country schools. And John found that the school year 1941-42, there were 126 school districts in Cass County. So, you know, if they weren't any more than 4 square miles, like that would take in a lot of school districts. We think that the current building was probably built in 1904, and there's some reasons for that. One, of course, that was the year of the mandatory school law, and so many schools were added. Probably a building from the 1850s that had been moved once was kind of in disrepair. And the other thing, up on the eve of the school was a sign said Plum Grove District 45, 1904. So that's probably when it came into existence. Now, they were supposed to teach 8 grades, which they did, but they didn't teach every grade every year. For example, at Plum Grove, one year you went straight through 1 through 8. My sister's back there, she did that. The next year, you had to skip around. In my case, I went to the 4th grade, from the 4th to the 6th, back to the 5th, 5th to the 8th, and back to the 7th. Now people find that hard to believe, but that's what happened. I do know that Mr. Holt back here went to, was it Hickory Grove?
Yes.
And you skipped around just like that.
So did you, Wingate did too?
Yeah, I was lucky, I went straight through, but my brother had to skip, just
Yeah.
like you said.
So a lot of them in Cass County did that. Now, I don't personally know of any that did that, but there were some that, oh, and by the way, I should add, the reason for that was the teacher only had 6 grades to teach each year. Now, some schools, the teacher would only teach 4 grades each year. One year they do the odd numbers, 1, 3, 5, and 7. See, I got a math education. And the next year the even, 2, 4, 6, 8. So that way the teacher only had 4 grades. One other difference between the country schools and the town schools, the country schools were only required to go 160 days a year. However, the town schools were required to go 180. So we only went 8 months a year, the town went 9 months. So, you know, in 8 years, why, the town schools went to school a year longer than we did. The reason for that was country kids were supposed to be out in the spring to help plant crops. And we did that. I personally was involved in that. Okay. Now, some description of the Plum Grove School. Most of the schools were, one-room schools were built 20 by 26 feet. However, and I learned that from Mr. Foster. However, the Plum Grove School was, the outside diameter was 33 feet by 22 and a half. Now, I want to mention how I knew that exact size, and I'm going to refer back to this a couple of times. I wanted to invite Bill Clark, who's back here, and he owns the school now, and he has since either 58 or 59.
No,
No?
about 86.
86?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, 86. Well, I was going to stop by and tell him, but one day I happened to go by and he was out by his garage, so I stopped. We talked a little bit and I asked him about the size, and he said, well, let's get on my four-wheeler and we'll go measure. So that's what we did. So apparently this was a little bit bigger than the standard. Now, there was something that happened on that ride around the school property with Mr. Clark that I think is really interesting. When I was going to school there, Numerous times I heard the story that there were slaves that had been buried on the property, and you weren't supposed to be able to do any digging because if they had died of cholera and you could release the cholera germ. Another part of the story was that they had died during the winter when the ground was frozen and it couldn't be buried, so the bodies were stored in a shed until spring and they were buried in a mass grave. Now, I heard that several times. I mentioned my sister, she doesn't remember hearing it, John doesn't remember hearing it. Diane, did you? Well, anyway, that came up in the conversation, and Mr. Clark told me, Bill, if I get this wrong, that when he bought the property, he got some documents with it, abstract and so forth, and there was a document that said that there either were or may be bodies buried in unmarked grave. Okay, well,
It didn't mention anything about bodies, it just said if I dug
okay,
and found bones,
okay,
but I had to stop and call the sheriff.
okay. Now that was a document with the land. So, you know, when I was growing up, I thought this was probably a Halloween story that somebody told to scare kids, but apparently there was something to it. Okay, now I want to describe the school. The windows were on the left side. Plum Grove, here's a model of the school up here. But on the,
Al,
yeah,
it didn't have those windows when it was built.
okay,
It only had 2 front windows and a door.
okay. All right.
They cut the whole side out of the west side and put these huge windows in
Okay,
years later.
so that's
What year did they put the kitchen on?
55, and I'm going to talk about that here in a minute. Well, one thing, that building wouldn't be standing if it wasn't for Mr. Clark's work, because as I understand it, the windows were put in with very little support, and that side of the building started sagging. The windows were even breaking, and I think you had to jack up the.
Initially, there was 4 columns on each, 2 columns on each side of the building, and there was a beam across above the ceiling, and that supported a brick chimney.
Okay.
And straight down below it, this was in the center of the building, there was a coal-fired, a coal stove. So they did away with the stove, and that's when they cut the windows in.
Okay.
But that was the support for the chimney. The chimney's still up there. So it eventually weighed down the wall and crushed those windows, so they were breaking and wouldn't open.
So if you hadn't jacked that side up and put in supports.
Yeah, I had to raise it up about 6 inches and put in new vertical beams.
Okay. Well, we appreciate you doing that. Okay, now, mention the windows were on the left. On most schools, not all, but, and the reason for that was most of the students were right-handed. And if the windows were on the right side of the building, it'd cast a shadow on their writing. And the ones who weren't right-handed, they tried to, a lot of, convert them to writing right-handed. Okay, the lot is about an acre. The front of the school is south. The highway there is P route now. At that time, it was just a gravel road. Okay, just to describe what it looked like, out in front was a flagpole. When in the front, when I first started school there was a slide, you know, a playground slide. Well, over the years, the wood sides had weathered and kids were getting splinters. In fact, I think my sister had a splinter that she had to have some surgery for. And so they took out the slide and put in a merry-go-round. On the west side of the school was a teeter-totter and a swing. And the frame of the swing and the bar for the teeter-totter are still there. On the east side of the school was the coal house. And obviously it got its name because the school was heated with coal. Now, when John and I went there, and Amy and Diane, it was heated by fuel oil. But, and Mr. Clark said that he noted that the center of the school, the floor had apparently been reinforced because those coal stoves were heavy. Okay, at the very back of the lot was, when I was in about the first 3 grades, was a horse shed. And there were 2 students that rode their horses to school at that time. And that was, yes, I know, Tom Pryor, Diane's brother, and Gary Gentry. Now, the shed itself, it was closed on the north and opened on the south. And at one time, there may have been several students who rode because it was a pretty good sized shed. I wouldn't doubt there could have been 10 horses tied up in there. When I talked to Linda Springer, Gary's sister, now Tom and Gary aren't around for us to ask questions anymore, but she told me the way it was, Gary's route to school took him by the Pryor farm, and Tom would get on and ride double to school. Well, when I talked to Carol Pryor, there she is, there. She said, no, Tom always told me that he rode his pony to school and tied it up all day. So apparently it was some of both. I do remember Gary one day, when he went east from school at the end of the day, there was a steep hill, gravel road, and he fell off his horse. And I remember him coming back to the school, crying, all skinned up. I think he even lost a tooth on that. And Linda told me that he was in the habit, he was always in a hurry, so he would just put a bridle on and ride bareback. Okay, in the northwest corner of the school yard was the girls' pit toilet, and on the northeast side was the boys. Now these were 2-hole pit toilets. The boys had an enclosure built around 3 sides, and inside that was a homemade urinal. Now the way this was made, it was 1x4s that were nailed together in a V on a slope, and now the school was on a ridge, so sloped down on both sides, so the boys' and girls' bathrooms weren't seen by the others. One thing I didn't think about until I was thinking about this is there was no running water at all. There was no running water in the school building, no running water at the bathrooms, and there was no provision for us to wash hands. Now, that wouldn't fly with the health department nowadays. But I mean, people lived through it for years.
I will add though, there was a water well beside the school, because I assisted in cleaning it out. I was a little scrawny and got shipped down to the bottom to help clean the mud out of the water well. So there was drinking water.
Yeah, well, yes, that was a cistern, and as I understand it, was about 12 feet deep.
I
Now,
don't remember, it felt like 1,000.
yeah. Well, so water had to be carried into the school building, and that was one of the jobs for older boys. One thing I might mention about those pit toilets, someone, John and I think it must have been a school board member, periodically they would come and sprinkle lime in there, and that kept the smell down. On the cistern, originally, water came off the roof of the school into the cistern. Now that couldn't have been just, but it did go through a charcoal filter, and there was remnants of that when we were in school. And John Foster told me that they only let water go in to the cistern during the cold weather months. I think that's right. Because during the warm, the water would spoil in the cistern. So, but when we were there, primarily Raymond Kircher, who had a custom water hauling business, hauled water and put in the cistern, and periodically it was pumped out, and as Mike said, he was sent down to clean it out. Now, Matt, maybe we could put up the first picture there. Okay, in 1956, there was an addition made to the school. And that's that front area right there. Maybe go through the second picture. Yeah, in that one, you can see originally the entryway was just a little narrow cupola type thing. And the people in that, there's two I recognize. This, I think, is Hubert Hale, and the tall lady back there was Ms. Rippey. I think her name was Mabel, wasn't it? And, okay, you could go to the next picture. That, I know that was in 1953. Now, John Gentry, that's going to talk here in a little bit, provided these good pictures. And that's the year he was in the first grade. I do know the student in front right there is David Carlisle. Is Carolyn? Oh yeah, there's Carolyn back there. Carolyn was in our class of '62 also.
Yes. And Paulo, and Gary, we got to pay here.
Class reunion going.
And up in the middle up there at the eve, you can see where it said Plum Grove District 45, 1904. Okay, and go to the next one. John provided this. That's the year that he was in the first grade.
That's all the boys. They're all 8th grades.
Okay. Okay. That's just the boys. Some of them, you know, Tommy Carroll, that's him right there. And
Just name them right across.
well, okay. This is James Saucity, Tommy Pryor, John Gentry, Tim Kircher, Skip Easley. I think that was Butch Small.
Oh, yeah, it is.
Clarence Burke, David Carlisle, Ronnie Card, Willie Bonnet, Richard Green, myself, and Chuck Kircher. Okay, and the next picture. Okay, that's also 1953, and that includes the boys and girls. I don't know. I see. Here's Carolyn Carlisle, and that's my sister Amy. The teacher was Cecily Mann. What's that?
I'm in the front row and the scarf.
Oh yeah, there you
I
go.
stand.
Yeah, and here's John. Okay.
And that's Miss Mann.
Yes, the teacher was Cecily Mann, yes. She was a teacher there for 3 years, probably year first, second, and third.
She passed away last year.
Yeah.
Yes, she passed away last year, and John and I went to her funeral. She later taught in Lee Summit and lived in Buckner. Okay, the next picture. In 1955, the little cupola entry was taken off and the addition was made on the front. Now I happen to know those men. The one with their back to the picture is my dad. And
Al, that chimney wasn't original either.
oh, is that right?
Yeah, it was built later when they did away with the coal.
Oh,
The original chimney went up through the center of the building,
oh, okay, I didn't know.
and the brick is still up there, but in the meantime, they torn off the exterior part of the brick and
Okay.
covered it over. Then they built this other chimney.
The person there by the ladder is Charlie Pryor.
That's what I thought.
And I might mention, Charlie was a talented man. He was, of course, a farmer, successful farmer. He was also a musician. He played drums and xylophone, vibraphone, and he was a good carpenter.
Yeah.
And I think in our memory, those two men did most of the work on that. Okay, the next picture. Okay, that's what it looked like as it was being framed. In the back here, you can see the coal house. Now that room, when you went into it, immediately on the left was a big coat rack. And again, it was handmade. Somebody had made it out of pipes, and you might even know who had done that. But coat rack, place to put your lunch buckets. That's one thing maybe John's going to mention pretty soon. Okay, yeah, there was a completed part. All right, what do I have here? Oh, yeah, inside here was the coat rack. If you turned to the right, that was still the entry to the school. If you went straight ahead, there was a counter came halfway out and had doors for storage under it. And then over against the west wall, there was more counters and a sink. And when you carried water in, you put it in a crock. And the crock, you know, like modern ones have a button, each student had their own cup. So, okay. So how about the next picture? Okay, that's another good look at the school. And you can see those windows covered almost the whole side of the building. And, the frame for the swing and the teeter-totter are still there. Okay, and try the next picture. Okay. Let me tell you, the good pictures John provided, you know. Pictures like this, I came up with some pictures because in the middle 50s, my dad had a 9mm movie camera, and so he took some movies, and of course those old 9mm film got antique, and we had it put on VCR. Now VCR's antique, and we had it put on thumb drive and DVD. And to get these pictures, my wife would play the movie on TV and stop it, and I'd take a picture. So this is the only one we have inside the school. But I wanted to show you this. This is what the inside of just about all the country schools look like. This happens to be interior of the Rockford Country School, and that was moved into Harrisonville next to the McEwen Elementary School and is used for education. And John, if you have any additions on that one. As you went into the room, you know, you had the school desk, windows over here on the left. Here was the teacher's desk, and then the blackboard. Now, in Plum Grove School, you see in this row is single desk, and this row looks like there's two students. All of the seats in our school were of the single seats, and I think there were 5 rows. Now, one thing, you started on the left side. If you were in the first grade, you started over here. By the time you got to the 8th grade, you were over here. So probably 5th grade was somewhere in the middle, or whatever grade you happened to be in.
I don't know when it come in, when I was in that back corner, they had a small round table that the 1st and 2nd graders sit around on a round table.
Oh, is that right? I don't remember that. Yeah. Okay, so if anybody, we could pass, well, it's kind of big to pass. I guess you could look at it later. We're going to be to John here in just a minute. I wanted to mention that there were 4 jobs that the students did. One was raising and lowering the flag, and we did that every day. John, I think you remember it better than me. How many students did it take to raise and lower the flag? Was it 3?
I'll get over that in a minute.
Oh, you will? Okay. So we raised the flag every day, and you stood at attention, and we said the Pledge of Allegiance. Now, one of the teachers, when we went into the classroom, opened every day with a prayer. I don't think that would probably happen nowadays. Another job was carrying in water, and the pump at the cistern was one that you cranked. You'll see a picture of it here in a minute. So you had to crank a lot to get very much water. And it took a couple of buckets of water. That job was always done by older boys, so you had to work your way up to it. So I was proud when I got to be the water boy. One thing I'll mention is, when we get to the picture, this was a metal frame that had a big handle that you cranked around and around. When I was pumping water one time, my chin came down on the edge of the metal, and I do have a scar right here. And then another job was erasing the blackboard and dusting the erasers. A student did that every day. Yeah, Gary said you pound them together or pound them on the sidewalk, and then carry out trash and set the trash on fire. Now, the trash went into like a 50-gallon metal drum, and I'm kind of surprised that students were given the responsibility of setting the fire, but they were. And one day, that fire got away, and it caught the coal house on fire. It didn't burn down, but we got some pictures. It was damaged and had to be repaired. One thing I can remember is apparently there were some parents there to pick up their kids, and I remember Virgil Carlisle taking off his coat and using it to swat the flames. Okay, so I'm going to end now, and John is going to describe the teacher requirements and what a typical day was. And then I'll talk again after that.
Alvin, how many people here attended a one-room schoolhouse?
Okay, how many?
I think we need to see that.
Wow. I'm just about preaching to the choir.
My mother taught in 5 years in one-room schoolhouse in Drexel.
Your mother?
My mother did.
Yeah. Well, my wife's mother taught also. She taught at Wingate, where Perry went to school, I know. Probably not when you were.
I was having a brother.
Yeah. Yes?
My mother-in-law, friend Nadine Burris, Secrets Burris, was a teacher at Wingate
Yeah.
around 1930.
Well,
She
Dave
wasn't
Parker's back
supposed to
there.
teach that year, but she had gotten married to Mr. Burris, Austin Burris. And they needed a teacher, so they allowed a married woman to teach. Now, I don't know what this problem was, because we had the same thing in the city. Married women weren't allowed to teach until World War II, after World War II.
Yeah, mine was right after World War II.
And
I
their
might
mothers
mention
were
that.
married, I just don't get the picture there. Anyway.
I might mention Dave Parker back there. His grandmother was a teacher at Plum Grove in 1921-22, I guess. Linda?
The lady that owned the farm where we lived, her parents bought that farm in 1904. And she went on to get her teacher's certificate. She was a daughter of the man who bought the farm. Nancy Cox was her name. And she was, the first year she taught, Mike Kircher's father was in first grade. He was her first grade.
Oh, okay. Well, John, you want to? Oh, yeah.
Pretty good crowd. Now, I was thinking about, when the illustrious curator opened the meeting, he was talking about the class of '62. As a proud member of the class of '65, I'm thinking maybe they're a legend in their own mind. So okay. Back in the back, I had made some handouts for, I think some of you got them. It's a list of schools and teachers That's for, I made 40 copies, I don't,
The rest of them are under the.
anybody wants one, can't get one, I'll make them one. That's the school year 1941-42. All of the Cass County schools that were active, or that were still in existence, the districts that were still in existence, and the teacher. I didn't make copies, but I've got another list of the same year that shows the president of the school board and the clerk. There were state mandated 3 members to the school board, and a clerk that was not a school board member. And the only paying position was the clerk. I think they got $10 a year or something like that. So, which was probably a lot of money back then. But anyway, interesting stuff, and I think that a lot of, I had my back, how many people went to Wandering Country School? Okay, a lot. So if you get one of those and start looking through the teachers, I'll bet you'd be surprised how many names you recognize on there, because there were a great number of teachers. It seems like the teachers kind of circulated around the schools 2, 3, 4 years was kind of the normal. And digging out the information on Plum Grove, this is kind of extra. Doesn't cost anything. Over at the Historical Society in Harrisonville, dug out a document that's got all of the people that were ever enrolled at every school. And Linda Kaiser compiled all that information. Plum Grove, there were 530 some people over the history of Plum Grove that were enrolled to go to school there. That's a lot of people. Yeah. That's a lot of people. So anyway, moving right along, I'm going to comment on something it's kind of a thought to put before everything else I'm going to say. Back in the 1830s, at the same time that the settlers were starting to move into Missouri, a young French aristocrat, nobleman type person, Alexis de Tocqueville, toured what the United States was back in those times, which was Missouri was the western frontier, and he wrote some pretty profound observations about America, and published a very famous book called Democracy in America. And just one thing really caught my mind in preparing for this. He had made the comment that the educational process, which was mostly rural schools, was geared toward the practical more than the theoretical. And he made the observation that this was a good thing and it was fitting for this country because the people, the public in a democratic republic or a democratic republic type government needed the participation of the people. And the people needed practical knowledge of how life works. They didn't need a lot of theory, they needed practice, they needed practical application. And he thought it most fitting that our style of education was matched up with our government. In European history, the single source authority like a king or a monarch or a czar, they really didn't want their people to be too educated. They wanted them to be obedient. And so the whole, when you think about the whole stream of education over the years of history, our educational system was very appropriate and unique to this country. And Alvin mentioned the school in 1830 here in Pleasant Hill. When the settlers first came, there were no schools. and no public money for schools. So, the school here in Pleasant Hill it was a school that was just, several families would band together, put up the money, make a facility, find a facility, build a facility, hire a teacher, pay for it themselves. They were called subscription schools. Okay, so they were paid for and financed by the people that use them, the subscribers. Public records of 1840 show in Cass County no public schools, no publicly funded schools, but 13 subscription schools. And I'm going to go through this relatively quickly. Kind of a timeline. In 1821 was the Missouri statehood. 1857, the state law authorized each county to appoint a commissioner of public schools. In 1860, this was changed to make the commissioner an elected position, which it was when, of all the people that went to country schools here, how many remember W. Donald Stewart? Okay, so several do. Okay, so he was the county superintendent. He was superintendent from 1947 till 1971 when the office closed. So a lot of us, and he was a real good friend of my granddad's. So I knew him somewhat personally. Elected position. Okay, soon after the Civil War was created, the state legislature created the State Department of Education. And soon after that, starting in 1867 through 1905, the state constructed and commissioned 5 normal schools. These were schools that were built solely for the purpose of educating teachers. Warrensburg being the second one, and it was commissioned in 1871. And I didn't know this until I was preparing for this. In 1880, there was a process instituted called the Normal Institute. The Normal Institute was a summer school, essentially, for teachers. The summer school, the Normal Institute would hold classes. And here in Cass County, they were held mostly in Harrisonville, but also there are records that it would be held in Pleasant Hill and Belton and Garden City. These were 4 to 6 week sessions that were attended by people that didn't have opportunities to go to one of the main normal school colleges. In 1924, the county superintendent was mandated to classify all county schools as first class or second class schools. And I'm not going to go into the specifications for that. But there were a list of specifications for a first class school, and they had to comply with all of them, and a second class school didn't have to comply with everything. And then there were certain specifications, they both were mandatory. So you can see kind of this progression of getting more organized and getting more technical about the qualifications for the teachers as time goes along. In 1927, the legislature declared that new teacher hires would require 2 years of college. Well, in 1927, how many people were walking around looking for a job with 2 years of college? Not many. So everybody that was teaching was grandfathered in. And the caveat was that you'd have to, during the summers, seek supplemental education to increase your education or your teaching abilities. I know, okay. Another question, how many of you had a mother or grandmother or somebody that was a school teacher? A bunch, several. So, and I remember my mother, she didn't do it full time, but off and on she would teach school, depending on whether the farming load. I know she took extra classes in the summertime up at William Chrisman. I think probably they were through Warrensburg, but she'd go up there during the night. Now, getting more down to a day at school, and Alvin talked about the chores. You know, most of us kids had a lot of chores at home. So it was fitting that, you know, they'd help out at school too. So the ones I can remember, and some of you guys, a lot of you guys that went, can probably help me out on this. And I'll talk about raising and lowering the flag. That was an important one. That would be two people. One person to hold the flag, and then folded it. The other one would fasten it to the rope. But we were always taught very carefully that the flag was never to touch the ground. And so there was two people, and one would hold it, and when we lowered the flag, when the flag came down, one boy would take the flag and hold that, and they'd unhook it, and then the two would fold it for the night. Other jobs were fill in the water crock. We had an old, I don't know, I think it seemed to me like it was about a 3-gallon crock in the kitchen area or the entryway. Yeah, big old gray crock with blue rings around it. Okay, we burned the trash. You mentioned having responsibility. I think most people our age was burning trash at home. So, anyway, among other things, filling the water crock, dusting cleaning off the blackboard, dusting the erasers. You have little kids to do that. They go and pound those erasers on the sidewalk. Okay, so and I think all of us probably have different memories. I remember the Pledge of Allegiance was probably the only absolute that I remember. We didn't do it every day, but from time to time, fairly often, we'd sing songs. We had some opening exercises to kind of get the day going. We might be singing songs. Sometimes the songs we sang, and I wrote down some that I remember singing. Down on the Swanee River, Jamie cracked corn, she'll be coming around the mountain. I've been working on the railroad, the Missouri Waltz. Anybody else remember something?
Battle Hymn of the Republic.
Okay, that was one of them. A lot of our songs, as well as what we did on the playground, had a Southern influence. A lot of Southern songs about the South. At recess on the games we played on the playground, Alvin remembers a lot more about those than I do for some reason. Anyway, what were some of the games that you guys played out on the playground? Fox and Goose?
Drop the handkerchief.
What's that?
Drop the handkerchief.
Okay. Black Man?
Red Rover.
Red Rover?
Dare Base.
What's that?
Dare Base. Dare Base.
I don't know. You'll have to define that
That
one.
was a city music.
Yeah, that did. That sounds pretty city-fied. But anyway.
I remember jumping from the swing. You'd get up the highest peak.
Yeah,
and
bail out.
Bail out, and then the ground went down.
Yeah, it was on a pretty big slope, and you could go a long ways.
I flew.
I had Alvin. He didn't put what, Diane? Alvin did not put one picture on there that I'm sorry he didn't. I have a picture of a 4-H Achievement Day over at Plum Grove, and it's a picture of okay, remember being in dairy, showing dairy cows? You did. I got proof.
John, that'll be one of the pictures.
Oh, he's going to show you that. I'm going to everybody be looking. Diane is undoubtedly the bravest woman I've ever met because she is showing a dairy cow wearing flip flops.
I was gonna say, I was barefoot.
So anyway, okay.
No one said I was smart.
Yeah, and here's something that maybe we haven't thought of. Normal class size was like 2 to 4 people. Nowadays we think of town school, 20, 25, 30 people in a class. Well, we had that much in 8 grades. I think, you said the biggest year we ever had was 28.
28, yeah.
Okay, in 8 grades. Most of the time there was at least 1 grade vacant. So people talk about, you have all those people, the teacher didn't have much time per student. It really isn't much different because even with the skipping and the various processes that different locations had, different ways of taking the workload off of the teacher. Even when she had 2 classes, she's talking to 6 kids instead of 30.
Yeah.
So the teacher time per student really was maybe even better than what you get in town school.
Johnny, I can remember that the older kids tutored the younger kids while the teacher was teaching another grade.
That's part. I'm going to get to that.
That's what I was gonna say, I taught younger kids.
Okay, so curriculum included basic stuff: reading, arithmetic, geography, grammar or language, spelling, penmanship, history, general science. Not a lot of art and music type stuff. Sing songs. So anyway, it was expected of the older students to assist the younger students if they were having trouble with their homework. The rural school was a lot more homework driven than later than town school. We did a lot of, a geography question would be that you would have to write 2 or 3, at least probably 2, 3, 4 sentences to answer the question, not just yes, no, or maybe. So if we're having trouble with that, as a little kid, you had permission to seek out the help of an older student to work with you on that. And it's just mandatory. It's just the way life worked. So it helped in several ways. Little kids learned how to communicate with the older kids. The older kids felt some responsibility for the little kids. The older kids could learn through teaching. And I think probably you found that through your lives that when you teach somebody else how to do it, you learn more about it yourself. So the whole, I think, and I'm kind of passionate about this, the whole process of the rural school was a one single 8-year process. It wasn't 1 grade and the next grade and the next grade. When you're in 1st grade, you go in and you focus on 1st grade stuff. That's what your teacher's talking to you about. But all day long, you're hearing everything else that's going on in 8 grades. So you're getting background on what's coming. 2nd grade, you're focused on 7th grade or 2nd grade stuff, but you're getting a review of 1st grade, a reminder all you learned in first grade, plus third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, and eighth. You hear it again. Third grade, you get a review of first and second grade, and a preview of all the other grades. So you progress through the whole thing. It's 8 years of the same thing, and I think we learned it better. I think when Alvin graduated from Plum Grove, we couldn't find a school teacher our 7th grade year, and immediately after school started, like within days, it was obvious that it wasn't working, and we consolidated with Pleasant Hill. So I went to 7th and 8th grade in Pleasant Hill. I went to, now talked about me going to Harrisonville. I went 6 grades at Plum Grove, 7, 8, 9, and 10 in Pleasant Hill, and we sold the farm and moved to town, but we moved to Harrisonville. And now there's, and I'll add a little bit to what Alvin said. When I moved from Pleasant Hill to Harrisonville, I went through a period of time when probably nobody would speak to me. The people in Pleasant Hill thought you sold out and moved to Harrisonville, and the people from Harrisonville weren't interested in knowing anybody from Pleasantville. So anyway, I kind of jumped around here a little bit. We're kind of running along on time too. One of the things that I did, some of the real good work that was done by Linda Kaiser on, I don't know this for a fact, for her doctoral work, maybe, I don't know. She did a lot of work on the country schools and compiled a lot of data. And talking to her, she grew up in Lafayette County. And in Lafayette County, they only started first grade every other year. So you had 1 year they teach, 1, 3, 5, 7. The next year, they would teach the number, would be 2, 4, 6, 8. And so there were many different ways of maximizing the teacher's efforts. Different locales had different ways of doing things. One of the things is like probably each one of us, of the many of us that have been to a rural school, that you remember that each teacher did things a little bit differently. That was just kind of how it worked. But it all got to the right place, and we all learned what we were supposed to learn. And I think most rural schools did a bang up job, because I know when we went to town school, there were, I will say this about the class of '65 and at Plum Grove, we were the largest single class, the baby boomer class that had ever been. In 100 years of school, there were 5 of us. So anyway, Alpha's going to talk a little more, and then you can ask him questions. So I'm going to bring this up now because I may escape. I did notice that when we were talking about this, one of the things he was going to talk a little bit about was discipline in the school, and it occurred to me after we had this discussion that he sure knew a lot more about discipline than I did.
It's true.
Okay, just a couple of things. Oh, and Matt, could you go to the next picture?
We'll get there.
On the discipline, I don't remember that there was bad discipline problems. You know, you hear, just horrible things at schools now. The discipline there, and I had to do this, at the blackboard, the teacher would put a circle that you had to hold your nose in until she said that was long enough. And if she wanted to make it really tough, you had to stand on your tiptoes. And after you breathed for a while, there'd be a wet rain, you know. The other discipline was staying in at recess. If you did something wrong, you couldn't go out. And John and I remember that. I don't think, regardless of the weather, unless it's pouring down rain, we ever stayed in at recess unless it was punishment.
It's pouring down.
Yeah. Now, I wanted to mention, he mentioned W. Donald Stewart, the county superintendent. I think he did several things. When I was talking with Perry he went to school at Wingate. He visited their school, and as I understand it, he decided that you weren't learning anything. And then he meet with the school board, and the teacher was fired.
Yeah.
So
They failed the entire school.
It's in 1958, and no parents complained. They said everybody stays where they are.
So I
They closed the school down and consolidated it East End.
Oh, okay.
I said over one more year, I'm not sure.
There's some things I wanted to mention that pertain to the school, but these are some of the pictures, and Matt did really good making this picture good. These are some pictures that my dad took movies of during recess. You can see the enclosure around the boys' outhouse. And you want to go to another picture. That is the pump that I was telling you about, that was cranking that big handle around and my chin came down on the edge. Okay, and go to another picture. You know, I think a lot of what we did at recess was, you just now call it horsing around, you know. I know that's me and that's Bill Foote, and that's Butch Small, and I think this was Paul Robert Card. But one thing I wanted to tell a story, hopefully pretty quick. When I was in first, second grade, I wanted a pocket knife. And my dad told me that when I learned to count to 100, he would buy me a pocket knife. Now, boys carried pocket knives to school back then. So I learned to count to 100, and he took me to the old Pierce hardware store and got me a knife. Now, shortly after that, me and some other boys were tossing the knife trying to get it to stick, and it disappeared. And now I felt bad about that all these years, you know. In 2017, we got back from spending the winter in Texas, went to a restaurant in Pleasant Hill, and there was a coffee group there, and Mr. Clark was in the group, and he told me that Roger Lowry had gone out to the school with a metal detector, and he had found some jewelry, some coins, and a couple of pocket knives. Well, of course, so shortly after that was the all-school reunion, and Roger was there. Well, I could describe my knife, you know, pretty accurately. And he said, you know, that does sound like one of the knives I found. So he invited me to his house, and I got my knife back after like 65 years. The blade was still open, although it was almost completely rusted away. Okay, maybe another picture. That's the coal house that caught on fire. They did repair it. In that picture, this is John Gentry, Bill Foote, and Larry Foote. Okay, another picture. That was the last full year that the school operated. That's Marie Thompson was the teacher. This is Diane Pryor, who's here. Sandra Burke, Bill Carlisle, and Paul Robert Card. Okay, another picture. That was, as John mentioned, that was the biggest class in school history. And yeah, you know, I could name them, but we. Okay, and then another picture. Another picture. Okay. Now, this are pictures of two teachers. The one in back here is Cecily Mann, and this is Nancy Smith. Cecily was our teacher at Plum Grove, and they both lived in a trailer house that was on our property. And my grandmother had lived in that after grandfather died. When she was no longer there, they had been friends in college, and they lived there for 3 years. Nancy taught at Bethel, and Cecily taught at Plum Grove. One other thing I want to mention is we didn't dismiss school because of weather. Okay, never. John and I only remember 2 times that the school was closed. One, there was a student that they thought had polio, and of course that was a big deal then. And the school was closed for a few days until they found out he didn't have it. Another one, the first thing the teacher did when she got there was start the fuel oil stove, and that was Cecily. And there was a procedure, one step after another. She got it wrong, and the stove blew up. And the whole inside of the school was covered in oily soot, and it was closed. Well, okay, next picture. Now, there was a football game between Plum Grove and Bethel, and it was in Pryor's pasture. Okay, yeah, they mowed it, marked it off with lines, and so yeah, we had a football game. Another picture. Yeah, that happens to me over there. I wasn't down in a very good stance for a football game. And next picture. And you really improved that picture, Matt. The girls were the cheerleaders. And that car back there happened to be my parents' 53 Nash Ambassador. I recognize that. And one other thing, when Cecily, lived next to our house there were times that my dad would take Amy and I and the teacher to school with the tractor and utility trailer. So we just didn't, call off school because of weather. Okay, next picture. Okay, this has to do with programs. There were 2 programs each year, Christmas program and 8th grade graduation. And I have here, my sister graduated from the 8th grade in 1955, and this is the program. Real quickly, the welcome was by Wayne Roberts. He was a first grader. There was a piano solo by Diane Pryor. Do you still play the piano?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Daily.
There was a play called A Date with the Dentist. And now these plays, there were several students, in each play, but this doesn't say just who they were. There was a reading, The Unfortunate Twin by Richard Green. There was a play called Naughty Numbers. There was a quartet, that was Richard Green, Amy Storms, Alice Ann Green, and Bonnie Carlisle. And then there was a reading by Gary Bowles called Freckles. The school sang Open Up Your Heart. Amy read the school creed. And so that was, and the closing was by Tim Kircher. So that gives you an idea of what the programs were like. Now, I wanted to mention that there were a lot of activities connected with school. One was Activity Day. Did you people in country schools, did you have Activity Day things? Okay. I know, John, you didn't, but Activity Day, and this had to be organized by the county superintendent, I think, because the country schools would congregate in certain places. We went to East Lena, and there would be 8 or 10 country schools there. And there was competition. There was track and field, there'd be races, high jumps, long jumps, Yeah,
Those results of that was in the Plum paper. I found many.
Really?
I found many of those, yeah.
wow. Well, I wasn't real good at running and jumping, but one of the contests was throwing a softball, and I can throw a softball quite well. But there was also academic things. There was reading, there was spelling, there was math. And I know I was entered in the reading one year. And there'd be 2 or 3 teachers, and they'd hand you something to read, like a story or a paragraph. And in the story was the word skiing. Now, skiing wasn't in my vocabulary. I don't think we knew anything about skiing. And it was spelled S-K-I-I-N-G, and I pronounced it skying. I tried to sound it out anyway. And another thing at Activity Day, there was singing competition, and I know that me, Tom Pryor, Diane, and Carolyn back there, we sang at Activity Day, and the name of the song was "Go Tell It on the Mountain." Remember that?
Reprisal.
What's that?
You and Carolyn can do a reprisal.
I could do a little bit of it, Carolyn. Now, one thing about Activity Day that I remember very well, when I was in 8th grade, when we got back to school the next day, Tom and I had to stay in all the recesses for flirting with girls at Activity Day. Now that's a fact. And I think what we did would just be so innocent. Okay, another thing I wanted to mention was the annual fundraiser. Now, at Plum Grove, it was called a pie and box supper. And how many of you went to schools that had pie and box supper? Okay. The way that worked is the women of the community and the girls in school would fix a meal for 2 people, put it in a box, and the box would be decorated all fancy, nice paper and ribbons, and then it was auctioned. And usually they got a professional auctioneer who probably volunteered just to get some exposure. One thing I remember about that is the Carlisle girls. Can you hear me, Carolyn? The Carlisle girls and their mother were noted for having very fine meals in those boxes, okay? Now, I always kind of liked Carolyn anyway. That probably shocks her. But I would always try to find out which one was Carolyn's box. But now, if I found out, I had competition from Butch and Tom, But I think I got yours at least one year. Now, at the fundraiser, let me just mention, my sister told me that when she was in high school, a boy at Hickory Grove, I think it was, invited you on a date to go to their pie and box supper. And of course, the boxes went to the highest bidder. And somebody bid more than he could afford. So he didn't get to set with his date. But another thing that they did was they would nominate somebody like the most lovesick couple and the man with the dirtiest feet. And they voted with money, so whoever won, John, I think you remember they put a pickle on a fork and they both had to bite off the opposite end.
Well, that was me.
Okay.
That was me and Sandra Berg.
Okay, all right. And we know that his grandfather won the man with the dirtiest feet one year. And they would actually wash the guy's feet.
Yeah, they did. They pull his shoes and socks off and wash his feet. And everybody else would laugh.
Another thing is there were all kinds of community get-togethers at the school. Of course, there was the whole community was there for the programs, but they had ice cream socials. Oh, how about this is a program? Okay, yeah. that teacher is, Miss Childress, Virginia
Oh,
Childress.
yeah.
Some of you will know her. She was, my teacher in 6th and 7th grade, or whatever grade I was in. Okay, next picture. Okay, yeah, keep on going, that's just more recess. Okay, another picture. That might be good because walking and bicycle riding was a common way to get there. And the gravel road, there was a steep hill going west. And if you could ride up that hill without having to get off and push, you were really stumbling. This was single speed bicycles, you know, you didn't have multiple gears. Okay, another picture. Okay, I think that is Carolyn over there on the left on the merry-go-round. Okay, another picture. All right, this is one of their ice cream socials. That happens to be my dad and Raymond Kircher dipping ice cream. And next picture. Okay, that is the same. There's the men back there. Here's all the cakes. I happen to know that's Mary Pratt.
Yeah, that's Mary's nose.
Now, one story I wanted to tell about these community get-togethers was there was a woman in the community, happened to be Mike Kircher's mother, who came from England. Their dad married her there during World War II. So, you know, she was at all of the activities, but one thing she wouldn't give up is she had to have her tea at every meeting, and she had to have milk with it. And she usually brought a little carton of milk. Well, this particular time, I hope you know about this, Mike. This particular time, she had forgotten her milk. Now, Butch Small lived on the adjoining property where Mr. Clark lives now, and they dairied. It wasn't grade A. They milked by hand and sold on the cheese router. And so Butch took her cup, climbed the fence, went to one of their cows, got a squirt of milk, and brought it back, and your mom had coffee with her tea. Now, John and I were both there.
We're witnesses.
We know that happened. A couple of other things. The school, and I'm sure the school board did this, they had special programs once in a while. One time, now this was not during school hours, this was a community thing. There was a man named Mr. Blyholder, and he lived over by Raymore, but he was one of the people, he had taken a trip to Europe and Australia, and he came and showed pictures and gave a talk. There was another time, and the whole community came, there was another time they had a musician, not music, but the trickery, you know, that magician, yeah. And the whole school came. So, another thing that happened was we took a trip to Chicago. Now, I think this must have been organized by the county school superintendent because we weren't the only school.
Oh, there are many schools.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we were, our parents took us to Union Station in Kansas City and we took a trip to Chicago. And I remember that our lunches were sent with us, you know, and we visited the Natural History Museum in Chicago. This was probably when I was in the 4th or 5th grade. And there was a captured German submarine that we went through. So those were. Now, another thing I wanted to mention is the school was a center of many other cultural things. There was a Plum Grove 4-H. Now, 4-H wasn't confined, it was called Plum Grove 4-H. They met at the school, but this took in a pretty big area. And I know that Dave Parker back there, his father was the electricity leader, and I had him for electricity teacher, and I could still do minimal electrical stuff from what I learned. There was a community club of women. Okay, another picture. Oh, here's what, 4-H, okay. This is a picture John mentioned. Here's Diane Pryor, and that's John, and then that's me.
That's I got flip-flops.
And lo and behold, you do have flip-flops.
My mother made that shirt for me.
Okay, another picture. Now, the other thing was a Plum Grove Community Club. And back at that time, of all the women in that picture, the only one that I know of that had a job away from home was John's mother. That's Helen Hope right over there, and she taught school part of the time. But the other mothers were stay-at-home, and they met once a month. Now, I do have a little story to tell about that. One summer, they were meeting at our house, and Mom would clean house for a month. Well, that particular day, it was really hot, and there was no air conditioning, so they moved chairs outside under a shade tree. Well, I happened to be down at the barn, and I found a black snake. Now we didn't kill black snakes, you know, they caught mice and rats in the corn crib. But, and I didn't kill it, I held it so, you know. But I thought maybe the women would be interested in seeing it. So, yeah, I was wrong. I don't think my mom ever forgave me. Now, another organization there, I think Mr. Clark has left, I think. But there was an organization called the Civil Protection Association, Plum Grove Civil Protection Association. And Mr. Clark, just at this meeting, gave me a book of notes from the Civilian Protection Association, yeah. And we're going to give it to the museum. I'd like to look through it first, but now we know that during the Depression, there was men volunteer that every night patrolled the community on horseback. Maybe they had cars later on, but a lot of it was horseback. And so that'll be interesting. Now, I know we're running kind of short. The last thing I want to mention was the 1948 Missouri Reorganization Law, school reorganization. And what that law said was that it offered incentives, I don't know exactly what, to consolidate into larger districts because they could offer more resources. And it said the education would be better if the teacher only taught 1 or 2 grades rather than 8. And that was the death knell for these one-room country schools. In 1948, the year of the law, there were 8,427 school districts in Missouri, and by 1952, there were only 4,573, and by 1971, they were gone. Now, not everybody believes that that's good. And I think, John, do you want to address that? I know.
You know, I guess I just feel blessed that I was able to go to a one-room country school. It was I think in today's terms, we might call it an organic learning process. It was not just boom, you're done. It was an 8-year process. And we get into, we're not going to get into any theoretical discussions on education, but in those times, 8th graders didn't need a lot of technical education. We needed to be able to write so you could read it. We needed to be able to balance a checkbook. We needed to know how to figure out when the car was going to run out of gas. Just practical stuff. I don't know that you could ever revert back to that in any practical sense in these times. But I bet all of you guys that did go really look back with fondness on the time that we spent with the other kids, living in a community that was a community. In these times, most people don't even know very many of their neighbors. But Alvin's talking about the social things. Every school district was a community center. That was the center of our universe. And when we'd have a program, it wasn't just for the school families, it was for everybody in the neighborhood. Kids or no kids, old people, young people. We all came and lived together and laughed together and had fun together. And
it was, you know, in a sense, more like biblical times. We didn't, you know, I know my mom and dad, actually getting in the car and going to Kansas City was a pretty serious decision. You know, we had to stop and think about this. Now we didn't drive up there for supper. So, you know, times are different. I don't know when we go back, but I for one am thankful I haven't.
It was a social gathering. My family come from East Tennessee, and when they come here, the kids that had already went to school down there started school back here to get to know the neighbors.
One thing I thought of on that trip to Chicago, my parents and Mike's parents came up to Union Station, Kansas City to pick us up. The train was late. Mike wasn't in school yet. So they thought, well, what are we going to do? They took Mike to the burlesque show.
Yeah. Going back to Dad's finger.
Oh. Well, I got this from John's mother. Well, my dad had lost one of his fingers. Now, he was a tough guy. He threw that finger in the stove, you know, because he was gone, couldn't be attached. But anyway, so he just had a stub on his index finger. And they were going around selling a little book that if you flipped the pages, it showed a girl dancing. And Dad said, no, I can't buy that. See, I don't have a finger to flip the pages. Before we quit, there's a couple other things I wanted to mention. And that was a little bit about interface between the Plum Grove community and the town of Pleasant Hill. I know there was Catholic, Methodist, Baptist, and Community of Christ. They all went to church in Pleasant Hill. Another thing was when somebody in the community got married, the community got together and had something called a shivaree. And one thing I remember about the shivarees was they would, all of them get together, come to town, and the groom had to push the bride up and down the old main street here in a wheelbarrow with all the friends and neighbors shouting.
Carol did that.
Oh, did you do that?
Yeah.
Well, I remember they did that when Richard Green got married, and John Warner Nichols, Bill and Peggy Collins. So that was a big tradition. Oh, Adrian, did you have to do that?
Yep.
Is that right?
I got real close to it. Shorty and Yvonne Carlisle were bringing the wheelbarrow and got in a fight and went back home.
Is that true, Shorty?
Now that you've brought up Shorty Carlisle, I see he's back there. I was talking to Shorty just last week, and you know, it was like 30 years between the time school closed and Mr. Clark bought the building. Well, during that time, it was used as a community center. And Shorty, I hope I don't say this wrong. I think you said, at least for some time, there were monthly community meetings at the school. And you specifically mentioned Charlie Pryor. He was a good entertainer, and sometimes he would play music. And also said that there were weekly pitch parties there. So the community did try to stay together. But one other thing, and this is the last thing, relation to Pleasant Hill. My family and a lot of other farm families came to town on Saturday night. And town was the old main drag right down through here. And they'd park, and of course usually there was some shopping to do. But a lot of it was social. There were other farm families they knew that came to town. They walked around, met their friends, and visited. And I think you said Saturday night you made more banana splits than any other time. But one thing I remember about that is at that time there were still steam engines. And you'd be on the street out here, and a steam engine would go down the railroad. And I guess the wind has to be right, but soot would settle out on the street. And the stores had a little V-shaped indention, and people would step back into that and wait till the soot settled, and then go on visiting with friends. Okay, that concludes everything I've got. I think that's it.
idea where it came from. Does anybody have any notion as to who would have made this thing and when? I'd sure like to know a little bit of.
Yeah, you know, Mr. Clark, and I think he's already gone, he knows who made that. He told me, but I don't remember who he said it was.
All right. Thank you.
Alvin, the school bell.
Oh, yeah, that is the bell used at Plum Grove. You know, the teacher would ring it when it was time to come in at recess. I happen to have this because my dad was on the school board when it closed, and so he just thought maybe we should have this. But I talked to my sister, we plan to donate it to the museum, as long as you'll note that it was Plum Grove School Bell.
All right.
It could be any bell.
Pete, I didn't know you were taking so many donations. I moved last year and had 25 cubic yards of stuff I had to give you.
You know, that would be good, because he needs something to do every Saturday now.
Yeah, I'm gonna invite you back. Anyhow, thank you very much for coming. Again, water and cookies, look at the museum too on your way.
I only have one other thing to add to that, is if you did not get signed in prior to the meeting starting, please, sign in so we have an idea who's here. If you do not get our newsletter and are interested in getting our newsletter, we could take your address, or we could take it by email, and would be more than happy to kind of keep you all informed on what's going on at the museum.
As you know, it's kind of racing, so.
And if you get the newsletter and you have any complaints, just see Pete, because it's baby doll.
I would like to make one observation. I'm really kind of surprised Alvin remembered so much about the trip to Chicago, because most of the time he sat with his nose in a ring on the train window.
I saw your sister just a few days ago.
You're just